Hello and welcome, my name is Retro, and today I am here with Nyx's Light rework. Warframe 1999 is finally out and there is a lot in it which is super exciting and a lot of cool new things added to the game, including Nyx rework. Now, Nyx was never really that bad of a Warframe. She's probably one of the least used frames, and a lot of people definitely thought she was very bad, but honestly she wasn't really that bad. But after this update there's a lot of new stuff to love about her kit, and she's definitely gotten way better than what she was before. So we will go over her kit and then we will show off my build for her. Starting with her passive. So a part of Nyx's rework was changing her passive. Her old passive was not that great. Her old passive simply just made enemies 20% less accurate when targeting her, which was kinda okay, nice for some a bit extra survivability, but it wasn't super amazing anyway. Her new passive, however, is very cool and adds a bit more weapon platform elements to her kit. Her new passive will give her a 40% crit chance to her primary and secondary weapon per confused enemy. Confused meaning enemies that are currently inflicted with the confusion status effect, which is radiation status effect. And most of Nyx's kit is around applying this radiation status effect on enemies to confuse them and make them turn on each other. This is really cool, which means as it makes her passive synergize quite well with her kit, and it also gives you that crit chance buff. And as far as I can tell, this crit chance buff is additive with mods. Next we have Nyx's first ability. Nyx's first ability will allow you to target a single enemy and mind control them and turn them to your side. When you first activate the ability, they will be stunned for a second, which will allow you to shoot them, and the more damage you deal to them will store up their damage and give them a damage buff when attacking other enemies. The person that is affected by this ability will follow you around and act as a companion of yours, and will also be immune to damage. This ability has mostly received some user-friendly buffs, but has also gotten some also pretty cool buffs as well. The mind controls enemies do have a base damage buff they get before you even start shooting them, and then that additional buff is on top of the base damage buff. It was previously 500% as the base damage buff, now it is 750, and it does scale with strength. The duration of it has also been slightly increased. The mind control enemies will also now deal radiation damage, so they can help spread the radiation status effect, give you more elements of crowd control, and obviously synergize with Nyx's passive. Additionally, you will now get a user interface above your energy bar, showing you exactly how much built up damage you got from shooting the mind control enemy, and also how much duration you have left with the mind control enemy, which was never there previously. Also, you would be able to decast the ability by simply casting the ability when it's already activated to free your subject from your mind control. But now if you do it while targeting another enemy, not only will you deactivate the ability on the previous enemy you targeted on, but you will immediately also activate it on a new enemy. The augment for this ability will give the mind control enemies an additional 1000% extra damage, as well as 25% movement speed and attack speed. And this extra damage is added with the extra damage it get from the base ability itself as well. Nyx's second ability is Psychic Bolts, and it has the highest armor strip in the entire game at base. It will strip enemies' armor and enemy shields by 80% that are affected by it. It will fire out 6 Psychic Bolts that will then strip those enemies with 80% of their armor or 80% of their shields. Meaning you need very little power strength to actually fully strip enemies that are affected by it. It is not a permanent armor strip, however it does last for quite a while, and the enemies will be dead before the armor strip wears off. The changes that this ability has received is that now whenever you inflict the ability on an enemy, it will give you either overguard, shields, or armor depending on what enemy you hit it on. If you use it on an enemy with shields, you will gain shields back from hitting the enemy. If you use it on an enemy with armor, you'll gain armor back from hitting the enemy, and if you use it on an enemy with overguard, you will gain over back from hitting the enemy. The ability cannot strip overguard, it will strip shields and armor through the overguard. Additionally, unlike pillage, it doesn't need to strip one or the other. It can strip both shields and armor at one go. Additionally, now whenever an enemy dies that is affected by this ability, it will spawn 2 new Psychic Bolts, which will then go off and attack other enemies. The augment for this ability, Pacifying Bolts, increases the amount of Psychic Bolts you spawn by 3. So you spawn 6 at base, and with the augment you increase it by 9. Additionally, after the update, this augment will now make it so that the ability will force proc 1 radiation status effect, which will also give you that extra level of crowd control. The armor, shield, and overguard buff you get amount you get from this ability is a fixed amount that does scale of power strength as well. Chaos is Nyx's third ability. Casting Chaos will make enemies be inflicted by, well, Chaos. This makes them be able to attack each other in addition to attacking you or other allies. Exactly how the radiation status effect works. In fact, the only real change that this ability received after this update was instead of making it somewhat of a fake radiation, which is what it was before, the ability will now instead inflict 10 radiation status effects on all enemies that are inflicted, giving them the confusion effect. This also means they also gain the extra increased damage that the radiation status effects gives to enemies that increases the damage they do to other enemies. The augment for this ability will leave behind a lingering field for a set duration, and any new enemy that enters within that field will also be affected by the ability of Chaos itself. Nyx's fourth ability is called Absorb. Absorb will put Nyx into an invincibility mode, but it will be unable to use any of her weapons. And in this mode, she will be able to store up all the damage, and when the ability deactivates, either by you manually deactivating it or running out of duration, it will deal the damage absorbed by the ability to allies within range. The ability received a few changes. Previously, the ability made you completely stationary. Now in the ability, you can move around and even go up and down, though you're still slow. Additionally, the ability used to only absorb damage that it itself took, which didn't really make sense for Nyx's kit, because Nyx is all about turning enemies against each other and making them shoot each other. So now it will also store the damage that is dealt by enemies to other enemies, very much increasing its ability. In addition to this, when the ability deactivates doing the damage, Nyx will gain 1 second of invulnerability for every 5,000 damage that was absorbed, and this does cap at 6 seconds. So you can manage to get 6 seconds of invulnerability from this ability by absorbing 30,000 damage. The augment for this ability allows Nyx to move on the ground and use her weapons, albeit her movement speed is still greatly reduced, but she'll be able to use her weapons and still attack enemies while also absorbing damage by the ability. Additionally, while the normal ability is a duration-based ability, the augment turns it into a drain ability, which will consume energy over time. Previously, before the update, the ability drained your energy based on how much damage you were taking. This is now removed. Another buff that the augment has received is that Nyx was never able to jump while in the effect, but now she is able to jump. So now that you understand Nyx's abilities, let's talk about this build. So what is this build all about? So this build is about creating absolute chaos, going crazy, and making enemies turn on each other, while also getting that crit chance buff from her passive. But we've taken it a step further and also added a fun little synergy with Loki's Helminth ability, Decoy. Yes, I know what you're probably thinking. What could I be getting out of Loki's Helminth ability, Decoy? Well, Decoy has an augment that allows you to place it on enemies. Doing this will make it so other enemies within the area will be alerted to them and try to attack them. And any enemy that does attack them will have status effects applied to them, essentially priming enemies. The issue with this ability is, however, it does not make the enemies infected by Decoy immune to damage, either by you or by enemies. However, we are able to cast Mind Control on enemies affected by Decoy. This means that not only are they now invincible, gain a damage buff, but now whenever and will spread the radiation status effect, but now whenever enemies attack them, they will also have random status effects applied to them, making it quite good for priming. Do note, however, that you cannot cast Decoy on an enemy that is already mind controlled. You will need to cast Decoy first, and then use Mind Control on the enemy inflicted with Decoy. Decoy also does have a shorter duration than Mind Control, so when the duration of Decoy runs out, you will need to tick a new enemy to activate it on, and then Mind Control that new enemy. While this is happening, we will also be using Nyx's second ability with the augment to spread the radiation status effect for crowd control, and also be armor stripping and defense stripping enemies to increase our DPS even more, on top of the crit chance buff that we'll be getting from her passive, making us quite a powerful damage output that is using an enemy on our team to prime for us, making it very fun and very Cool, so let's check out the builds themselves. For Nyx, I am not running primed flow. This is because it isn't a very energy intensive build. Both decoy and mind control have quite long durations, making the only ability I really need to use often is her second ability, as I'm also not using chaos. Because of this, I did still put on 2 Archon Shards for energy max, just to increase my energy just that extra bit. I did choose to Helminth off Nyx's 4th ability instead of her 3rd ability, because I didn't really necessarily see the use of using her 4th ability for this build, and Chaos could be useful in different circumstances, but I still don't really use Chaos that much either, so if you did want to use her 4th ability, probably for the iframes that it gives, then Helminth and off Chaos is perfectly fine as well. For the Nyx build, you can run whatever aura you want. I am using Corrosive Projection, but it is not because of the armor reduction. I have enough strength to fully strip with Psychic Bolts regardless, and Corrosive Projection alone will only end up stripping 98% of enemies' armor, not the full 100%. So in addition to this, we are running mostly duration more than anything else with Constitution and Prime Continuity. You don't need to put on range on Nyx, but I still want positive range, which is why I didn't end up doing narrow-minded. These two together give me the 183 ability duration I have, and I am using Upper Intensify just for the extra ability strength I need, simply just to make Psychic Bolts fully strip enemies. The extra ability strength, however, does also increase the amount of armor, shield regen, and overguard I get from Psychic Bolts, and also increase the status chance of Decoy's Augment. We obviously have both the augments, the Pacifying Bolt augment that will not only prime enemies with radiation status effect, improving our crowd control and synergizing with our passive, but also create an additional 3 Psychic Bolts whenever we cast the ability. And we also have the Damage Decoy augment, which is the augment for Loki's first ability. Then we are running a shield tank setup, so we are using fast deflection, primed redirection, and adaptation for our survivability. If you don't have primed redirection, normal redirection is obviously perfectly fine, though primed redirection would be better. Multi-efficiency is for some further duration to further increase the duration of Decoy. Decoy is really the only one you care about because Mind Control will last a lot longer than Decoy, and we'll need to recast Mind Control anyway when Decoy deactivates. And then Arcane Energy for our energy economy. For the weapon, you can run whatever weapon you want. I personally went with the Torrid because it's incredibly powerful. For the Torrid, I do have a very simple blast setup. We're using Galvanized Chamber for the multi-shot, Galvanized Aptitude for the status chance and for the gun CO effect. We have Critical Delay for the status crit chance, Vital Sense for the crit damage, Rifle Elementalist for the status damage, which will buff our blast damage, Primary Restless for the base damage, Vigilant Fervor for the fire rate, and also a small chance to buff our crits further. And then we also have Thermite rounds and Ram rounds for the status chance and Blast. Blast works best with Armor Strip, which is what makes Psychic Bolt work so well with this setup, because Psychic Bolts will be going around armor stripping enemies for us, so we don't have to worry about it. For the companion, since this is a shield tank setup, I opted to go with Taxon, because Taxon is very good when it comes to shield regeneration. This is because of this ability right here, Molecular Conversion. It allows Taxon to fire out an attack which does basically no damage to enemies, but it will convert some of the damage it does to our shields, increasing our shields, giving us shield regen. In addition to this, we can also make use of the other 2 robotic mods, Shield Charger, which will increase our max shields, increasing our the amount of time we get from shield gating, and it also increases our shield regeneration. And obviously we also have Guardian, making it so that if our shields do completely replete, as long as it's off cooldown, it will fully restore our shields. Manifold Bond is obviously a must-have to reduce the cooldown of all 3 of these preset mods, and we do have a Momentumist mod as well to improve the survivability of our companion, as whenever our companion does go down, it allows us to lower the recovery timer by 18 seconds each time we kill an Xmas unit. Since Deconstruct will increase the chance of health orb drops that are tagged by the companion. And then we have Calculated Redirection, Enhanced Vitality for the companion's survivability, Assault Mode, which is needed because we will be using the companion's weapon, and of course Vacuum as a must-have mod. The weapon we are using is the Taziko, which is by far the best companion weapon in the game right now for priming enemies. It is a chaining beam gun, which is extremely good for priming enemies. We do have our Fast Hands for the increased reload speed, Rifle Aptitude for the status chance, Shred for the fire rate and punch through, Split Chamber for the multi-shot, and we also have our different status effects. We're using Radiation Reload to give us the radiation status effect. We have Malignant Force and Rim Rounds to give us viral. The weapon itself has inherent electricity, and we are using the new magnetic capacity. I would recommend fully leveling this up. I just did it for mod capacity reasons. And magnetic capacity will also give us magnetic, giving us magnetic, which will increase the damage you do to overguard and shields, electricity, which will stun enemies, radiation, which will confuse enemies, giving you more crowd control, and viral, which will increase the damage you do to enemies' health, making this a very good setup when it comes to priming enemies. For the other weapons, you can really run whatever you want. However, I would recommend running both the 2 Auger mods on your secondary, just for your shield to energy conversion, giving you that extra bit of survivability, and also Amalgam Barrel Diffusion to give you that extra rolling speed to add a little bit of utility. And I am also using the Protoss as my melee for this evolution, which gives you sprint speed and slide, and this evolution, which gives you additional parkour velocity. For the focus score, you could also have quite a few options. I am running Xenoric for the energy economy, but that is mostly just for the start of the mission. I can pop Wellspring to get enough energy I need to build my damage rotation, to get my damage rotation going, and besides that, it's not really needed. Vazarin you would use if you wanted some grouping or additional survivability with Protective Sling. Yunara you would use if you wanted knockback resistant and weren't doing Prime Sure-Footed. The armor strip from Naramon is obviously not really useful with Nyx because she has an armor strip of herself. And Mataray you would use for the extra casting speed, extra power strength, and extra damage to your operator as well if you wanted that. Naramon wouldn't be useful for the setup because it's only really useful for melee, quick attack melee builds. Anyway, that is all I have for this video. I do hope you enjoyed, and I hope you've been enjoying the updates as I sure have. The Nyx rework is one of the first things I really sunk my teeth into, but I am very happy with the changes that she has gotten, as well as the changes Trinity has gotten. And the new Warframe Cypher 9 also seems to be very powerful. I've done some testing with him already, and he is quite powerful. You can expect my next build to be on him, and the build, my next video after that will be on Trinity. After that, I'm not sure, but we'll see what the future holds. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video and if you're interested to stick around to watch my Cypher 9 build and my Trinity build when they do come out, or if you're interested to check out any of my other videos, maybe subscribe to my channel, leave likes to this video even, give me a comment. Feel free to give me any recommendations of Warframes you would like me to see build for. I'm happy to do that. And I do also have my clan my Warframe clan / channel Discord in the description below. If you wanted to come in and join that and hang out with us, we have hang out in VC and we have fun times. Anyway, until next time, bye bye.